Hello all, welcome to another video of the Solving Harder Studies to Improve Chess Calculation series. This is going to be study number 101 because this is the second series of solving studies to improve chess calculation. The first one went from study number 1 to study number 100, so this one starts with 101. So let's go for the composition. This composition, this endgame study was composed by Oleg Pervakov and Kara Sumbatyan. They both are Russian chess composers. I wanted to start with one study from Pervakov to honor him and to thank him for all his work with chess composition. And so, as always, I suggest you watch the guide. There's a new input guide for this series, but you can also go for the first one. So both are good. Then, as always, the countdown will start. You have 10 minutes. You can pause. You can come to the start. You can use more time, less time, and then I catch you back with a solution. And here we are, and the first move is Queen A1 exclamation mark. Of course, what's going on the position, it's very easy to see. Black intends to promote to a queen. Of course, the rook is also threatening our queen. So basically, if we take the rook, then black can promote to a queen and get an easy draw at least. But because we are trying to fight for a win, we need to be careful because moves like, for example, going with queen c3 are not helping because this allows black to be very fast getting the protection of the pawn, so getting the draw, because now we are forced to come with a queen and there's no way to progress from here, so we get a draw. And other things like, for example, going to the other side with the idea if the rook goes to a8, then we get this kind of fork, shaking and grabbing the rook is not enough because the rook has time to come to b3. So the idea is to go to a3. Now, if I check the king, then just the king moves away because when the queen takes the rook, then the pawn can promote. So the first move, I think it's relatively easy to find, and so the queen goes to a1. So what we are expecting over here is simple. If the rook now tries to protect the pawn, then we get this check. The king needs to move. Let's say it goes next to the pawn, but now I have time to take the rook. Now the king is threatening to go to b2 and draw this endgame with the pawn because the king is really too far away. But then we have this move. The queen goes to a8, so h8, so controlling the promotion of the pawn, and the king tries to approach, but we are in time to get to a1 and win. So this is the expected continuation after we get the queen to a1. So, but it's black to play, and so here starts the novelty for this series, because this is a series to use the studies to practice. So this works very well, not just watching the video but really trying to solve. That's the way to improve. And the move from black is going to be G3 exclamation mark. And so now, because probably you haven't found this one, and as I want to guide you also so you can improve, this is the first one. So the next ones will be harder. So harder to find out the defensive moves. And now I'm going to start a shorter countdown, normally 1 minute. I think it's enough. If you have seen this one, you can jump immediately to the continuation of the solution. Otherwise, take the time. If you need, you can stop, think more from here, and that's the way you are going to improve. So see you after this new countdown. And we are back again. And the correct move for white, it is to move with the king to h3. And why is that? Because the idea from black, it's very simple. By checking the king, either the king avoids taking the pawn into one of these three squares, but any of the squares is going to allow the rook to come to a8 without any problem, because now the king will be in the way for that kind of check where the king moves away and then we grab the rook. The same goes if the king goes down. It's the same way. We are now blocked to avoid the rook going to a8, so we get the draw over there. So basically the two moves to think are the ones that we take, or we avoid it going to h3. If we are taking the pawn, well, then black can simply reach the a file through b3. So now the king moves. Of course, the idea from white is to get black into the mistake of moving the rook. Then we move the king, and now we need to protect the pawn, but then we get this fork. The king moves, but now we reach the rook, the king moves away, and even get the pawn. But of course, black is not going to fall to unnecessary checks and go directly to a3. There's no more fork over here. And if we check the king just comes closer to the rook. There's no way to force it anymore, so we are facing a draw from here. So the king can't grab the pawn, and that's the interesting idea. Of course, from here, it's easy if you have found the king h3, because now black is forced to protect the pawn. There's no way to avoid it, otherwise we are going to take with the queen. Notice that even if we advance the pawn, the queen takes its check, and then we are able to grab the pawn, and then we are facing a queen versus rook endgame that you also have a series that I have made for that. If you haven't been working on that technique, I suggest you go through the series. But for here, it's enough to know that the queen beats the rook. So from here, of course, the rook goes to a8, and we are already aware of the continuation. Of course, the pawn tries to sacrifice, so to see if the king takes the pawn. But of course, we take the pawn again with check. The king moves away. We go after the rook. And now, of course, we control it through the long diagonal. And of course, there's no way black can avoid what will happen. That is a win for white. Okay, hope you have enjoyed this one. And as always, I see you in the future ones. Bye-bye.